The BS Report is a free-flowing conversation that occasionally touches on mature subjects.
First of all,
this is the BS Report with Bill Simmons.
It might be cool, I don't know. And if it's not, I don't care.
The BS Report with Bill Simmons.
Bill Simmons works for ESPN. He's also named the Sports Guy, and he writes a comical sports column. He must be a popular dude.
The BS Report.
It's got a real dirty sound, like a rusty steak knife cutting through a well-aged steak.
Now.
Here's Bill Simmons.
Welcome to the BS Report. We're going to do a little baseball today. Coming up in a little bit, my buddy JackO. We're going to talk Yankees and the fact that they are now fiscally responsible and a whole bunch of other things. But right now from Greatland.com, Jonah Keri, you've been a busy man lately.
I tried my best. I was in the jamboree of an ecosystem that was the Gaylord Opryland Hotel last week. And now I'm back on terra firma, so a little bit better.
What's the scene there? Like, how many media members are we talking about here at that Winter Meetings Hotel?
It's everybody, and it's not just media members. I literally saw Davey Johnson walking the halls 4 times in the first couple hours that I was there. And it's a little weird for me because, and maybe this goes for a lot of people who aren't, let's say, Buster or Ken Rosenthal. If you're not chasing a lead down every time, you're just sort of waiting for the news to happen, and you can react to it and analyze it. You don't know what to do. And it's furthered by the fact that I'm, for better or for worse, just a very friendly SOB. So I go up to these people and say, hey, how's it going? And some of them just look at me like I'm completely crazy. So I sort of don't know how to handle myself. I do my best.
What was the single best thing that you saw in that hotel that you did not write about last week?
I was at the hotel bar, and there was a Major League general manager who was being very friendly with people.
And?
That's all I'm going to say. I'm not going to go further than that.
That's the worst story I've ever heard.
Listen, you can connect the dots on what friendly means and what bar means and what time in the morning it was and things like that. I don't want to get myself in trouble or that person in trouble.
All right. Let's talk about, I would say, the most polarizing trade that casual sports fans probably didn't give a crap about, but on the internet, it was really great. Some great takes all over the place, including Randy on Grantland and then you today on Grantland. Tampa and Kansas City. I'm going to do a little soliloquy here, and then I'm going to bring you in. So, I'm in this AL Keeper League that I've been in for the last 8 years.
I do.
There are really 2 strategies for that league, and one is to stockpile all these prospects, and you're basically banking on hope. And you're grabbing these guys, you're grabbing draft picks, and you're hoping for that 1 year when all these guys, these cheap talent, they come in, they win the league for you, and it's just you look like a genius. Then the other route is the route that my buddy Mike Mendelson does, where he just immediately cashes in these prospects, these future trips, the potential, and tries to grab people immediately. And Mike always either wins our league or finishes second. So the Royals, who have been trapped in that first way of doing things where it's potential year after year. This year they finally went the other way and said, screw it. We're done with potential. James Shields is a sure thing. Wade Davis might be a sure thing. Here, take our best prospect. He's the 3rd best prospect in all of baseball. And we're also going to throw in 2 more awesome prospects. We don't care anymore. We just want to win. I know you didn't totally agree with the trade from a baseball standpoint, but I don't know if I disagree with the logic. I mean, you can see their logic, right?
Well, to a certain extent I can, and going for it is always good. I mean, for better or for worse, my whole life I've rooted for underdog teams, and I've always wanted them to go for it. The biggest trade that the Montreal Expos ever made in a season, going way back, is in 1989 they traded 3 pitching prospects for Mark Langston. One of those pitching prospects was Randy Johnson, who's a first ballot Hall of Famer.
Yep.
But they got Langston, and he was amazing, and they did really well that year, and they almost won the division. I'd do that again 700,000 more times. Love it. Go for it. Who cares? It's great. But that's an emotional fan take. And Dayton Moore's job is not to be a fan, it's to consider all contingencies. And the problem that I had with the trade, which maybe is a little, Rainey's take was fantastic, and there were some other good ones, as you said. But my thing that I kept fixating on, and that's what I wrote about today, was there's always a plan C. And people who think in a very linear way, and they say, well, it has to be this or this, or, oh, this guy's an ace. I need an ace. What can I do to get an ace? That really isn't the right way to think about it. The right way to think about it is, how can I get better and give up as little as possible? And to me, the move wasn't necessarily get Shields, who I like, who's very good, and I hope he isn't getting denigrated in all this when the Royals are getting criticized. He's great. But I would have gone another way, and I would have said, why don't I take some money, sign a pitcher, and keep Myers and all those guys? Or why don't I sign a pitcher, and then on top of that, trade Myers and all those guys, and go get Shields? And there's a couple ways you could have done that. Number one is to jump in on a pitcher early. Certainly that's possible. And helping that out would have been to not spend more than $20 million on Jeremy Guthrie and Irvin Santana this year. They had the money, oddly, which is rare for them, and they chose to spend it in weird ways, which kind of exacerbated the problem, which left them even more desperate for an ace, which forced them to make this move, which might not turn out to be a terrible move. I just don't like the way they boxed themselves into a corner, labeled what it is that they needed, and then overpaid to get it.
Yeah, and that's the key point, is they had other choices other than this choice. And, I look at like the Red Sox, one of the greatest trades in the history of franchise, trading Brian Rose and Carl Pavano and Tony Armas Jr. To Montreal for Pedro Martinez. You're getting a sure thing. You're getting a guy who was arguably the best pitcher of baseball when they traded for him, and then he went up another level. This move, I have a couple issues with it. One, I just don't think it's a good idea to trade with Tampa Bay ever. It's just, especially if you're making a monster potential franchise defining, my job is on the line with this trade. I'm not sure Tampa is the team I want to trade with. So that's one problem. The other thing is, I get it. Potential. Some of these guys don't pan out. There's been some good lists recently. Randy had one about, the top 5 or the players of the year in Baseball America or whatever. Buster had like who were the number 3 each year, the number 3 best prospects, and it's a little bit hit or miss. But at least with Will Myers, the easiest thing to project is just offense, right? Like it's one thing to pitchers, but it's another thing to just say, yeah, this guy can hit. He's probably going to be able to hit at this next level now. And, the biggest advantage you have is being able to have these guys for 6 years. And as Tampa has shown, you can turn that 6 years into 10 pretty easily.
Yeah. No, and all those things are true, and there's a couple of things going on here. Just to make a macro point, since, you got Moneyball and the Baseball Prospectus era and all this stuff, and even going back to Bill James, there are all kinds of ways that you can look at a deal. We sort of think more intelligently about sports in general. I'm not even just saying baseball. Basketball, we have Zach doing these really complicated breakdowns of in-game events, but even trades and things like that. And football, we have Barnwell. And you could go, and it's all over the internet. It's everywhere. You can get these great takes. And you mentioned all these angles. And one of the angles that I really liked on this trade was Dave Cameron at Fangraphs. He was talking about it. And he said, we need to be careful about what we think constitutes risk and what we think doesn't. The argument for the Royals, one of the arguments was, James Shields is as reliable as it gets. He's thrown 200 or more innings 6 years in a row. You know what you're getting. It's James Shields. That's fine. Will Myers has never played a major league game. So we just attach these labels to it. We say, well, James Shields is definitely reliable, and Will Myers is a total crapshoot. Well, that's obviously not true. Pitchers get hurt all the time, even pitchers who've been healthy for a lot of the time. And he listed all these guys with very similar profiles to Shields, who all busted, who seemed very reliable. Going into last season, if you had said, Ricky Romero or Tim Lincecum, or he named all these guys, it seemed like they should be pretty good, and they were not good. And this happens all the time. And yes, prospects are more reliable if they're hitters, and yes, prospects are more reliable if they're considered maybe the best prospect in baseball as opposed to the number 62. And the whole point of all this is really to think about it in terms of a range of probabilities. It's very much a Nate Silver kind of thing, if we're going to use another kind of well-known stat guy. When he came out with Pacoda, he wasn't saying this guy's definitely going to hit 270 next year. He said this is a 10th percentile projection, this is 50, this is 90, and so forth. And he gave you a range, and it made you think in a way that said, all right, this could happen with Will Myers, or this could happen, and I'm going to weigh my percentages, weigh my odds, and then I'm going to make a move. And that's really what the Rays did. The Rays, quite frankly, sort of think like Nate Silver. They say, these are the possible things that could happen if I do this. These are the possible things that could happen if I could do that. Here's 10 more things I might consider doing, and I'm going to try for the best thing. And you're damn right that they're thinking about the Evan Longoria contract or the Matt Moore contract or even the Wade Davis contract when they got Will Myers. I guarantee you they're going to sit down with the guy's agent very soon and say, all right, I'm going to make you a rich man before you ever play a major league game, but you got to, give us your soul for the next 9 or 10 years. And for Will Myers, who's 22 years old, but maybe he breaks his leg tomorrow, that's an attractive proposition. I reject the notion that players are chumps for signing away their life to Tampa Bay because you never know what can happen. If you look at guys who get hurt And it happens where guys get hurt. Right? Tommy Hanson is a great example, very talented young pitcher. He didn't sign that deal. I mean, he was an afterthought for picking up that the Angels got him. He lost tens of millions of dollars by not signing a Longoria contract. There's benefits to both sides, and I bet you they go for it. And I think there's a good chance it happens.
Well, the key point to me, and it's a great argument. I liked hearing all the takes, but there's one indisputable point, and you and I both mentioned it to each other. We were emailing about it Sunday night. The difference between Anibal Sanchez, who's still out there, and James Shields is not dramatic enough to give up Will Myers. It's just not. And you could argue, maybe Sanchez would perform even better the next couple of years than James Shields, because as Randy wrote yesterday, look at all the stuff that's in James Shields' favor, like the ballpark, Joe Madden, having a good team year after year. Now he's going a lot of pressure in Kansas City, not a good offense. The wheels could come off a little bit for him. And if it were me, I would just keep Myers and overpay a little bit for Sanchez. I just think that's a no-brainer. You think that's a no-brainer?
Yeah, I think it is to a large extent. And I tried to play devil's advocate. I didn't want to really destroy the Royals because I understand that human beings are complicated in the way that they think. And I put forth the argument, well, maybe Sanchez would not have wanted to sign in Kansas City, and that you would have had to really overpay, and it requires kind of a disconnect in the way that you think to try to change that. Or maybe he was going to hold out till the end of the market, and let's say they got in a bidding war with the Dodgers. Well, who knows how that was going to play out? And there are all these things. But sure, it makes sense to do it that way. And forget Anibal Sanchez. If we really want to go nuts, and we're talking about they're paying $20 million more than that this year for Guthrie and Santana, and they're going to pay 10 plus for James Shields. Heck with it. Go get Zach Greinke. Bring him back to Kansas City. Just get top of the market and just go for it. And, okay, maybe it sounds high in the sky or whatever, but at least in the first few years of that scenario, the money is there. They're spending it elsewhere. They're choosing not to do that. And these are choices that you fall into. These are choices where you say, we're Kansas City. Nobody ever wants us. Woe is me. We got to shake things up. We got to be over aggressive to make it happen or whatever. It's not true. Tampa Bay's made it work, and let's forget about obsessing over the Tampa Bay business for a second. Minnesota's made it work, and Oakland's made it work. You can be a small market, small revenue team and do it, and not have to do things that just are not smart. It can absolutely be done. There are ways to do things unconventionally. Sanchez would have been one of them, certainly. Wasn't even that complicated. You throw a bunch of money at him, like you said, overpay, to keep the other guys, and they chose not to do that. And I think part of it is Dayton Moore wanted to keep his job, and so just sort of, he ran after Guthrie and Santana, and what's the next move? I got to do this because I got to try to keep my job. And David Glass is 77 years old, and maybe there's a little bit of a Mike Ilitch syndrome in there that says, got to do it, got to do this, got to make this move. But even if you go for that aggressive standpoint, I think you could have been aggressive and smarter at the same time.
Well, it's interesting. You talk about probability, which is really what this is all about. And the other problem I had with this deal, other than the ones I already mentioned, it seemed like the previous things that have happened to Kansas City affected their feelings about this deal. And I'm not even talking about wanting to be relevant and James Shield and building around an ace, whether you think he's an ace or not. It's just the fact that they've had bad luck with signature prospects, and it's like, all right, Alex Gordon, he's supposed to be the next George Brett. Well, it didn't happen. He kind of reinvented himself a little bit, but clearly didn't reach that potential. Same thing with Eric Hosmer, who destroyed my fantasy team last year. I still think he can come back, but 2 years ago, he's the next Will Clark. Last year, he's hitting 230. And you go down the line, all the pitchers that they had that didn't pan out. This is a franchise that for years and years has been selling its fan base on, look at this, we have 5 of the top 20 blanks. And after a while, I think the fan base just got burned out on it. And that affected their thinking here. Now, I would argue Will Myers was probably the safest bet of all of the quote unquote can't miss prospects, just because he is what he is. He's below average defender who can hit the hell out of the ball. Like those are guys that usually do that in the major leagues. Like that's somebody in my fantasy league I wish I had, because you know what you're getting with him. But I feel bad for the Royals fans. I really do. I feel like between the Royals and the Chiefs, Kansas City is making a run at Cleveland as the most tortured sports city. This Royals thing. Like, when was the last? I can't even remember the last time. When was the last time they were good?
Well, they haven't made the playoffs since '85. so it's been a while. The thing that gets me too about Kansas City is that, they have all this pathos going on, and they have a freaking murderer's row of sports writers on the case between Rainey and Rob Neyer's got connections there, and the whole Jeff Pass and Kevin Kadok crew, all the guys who work for the Kansas City Star. And, I mean, it's on and on. Poznansky, they're all great, and they do such a good job of really talking about that suffering. And it is there, and it is difficult. And, I am sympathetic to the idea. Like I said, I've rooted for some loser teams in my time, too. And you become sympathetic to this plight. I think there's something to the failed prospects thing, but I think it's maybe being a little bit harsh on what's going on. Gordon eventually matured into about a 6-win player. It's just a lot of his value is in defense and on base percentage. It's not obvious. He's not obviously George Brett. He's just a very good player. Hosmer's 22 or 23. He could easily pan out. But I get it. You would have thought that the timetable would have started to advance a little bit at this point. That's sort of the frustrating part. And yeah, with Myers, that's certainly the case that he could become that player that's certainly out there. And like you said, it just does go back to probabilities. It's thinking about how do I want to do it and how's it going to happen. And it's tough. You just have these differing views. An article I wrote, this is 10 years ago. I think it was literally like the second article I ever wrote as a quasi-professional baseball writer was for Perspective. And it was about the 2002 Red Sox and Dan Duquette. Do you remember the 2002 Red Sox?
Unfortunately, I do. It wasn't a very happy season.
The 01-02 Red Sox, right before Theo Epstein, Duquette had done a great job of picking up Pedro Martinez twice, and he'd made all these nice moves. He picked up a lot of guys off the scrap heap, like Troy O'Leary, who became, these guys who became pretty good out of nothing.
Yeah.
And then he sort of started doubling down because he said, well, wait a minute, my job could be in jeopardy, and it was, by the way, and I got to do these things, and he started pushing the envelope a little bit. And I'm calling this out for a reason, aside from the fact that it's a pretty good example of this idea of moral hazard and overextending yourself. But I wrote an article and basically said, Dan Duquette is not a bad guy or anything, but in some ways he's putting his intentions ahead of those of the club. And again, I'm an admirer of Dan Duquette. I think he did a great job with the Orioles and a good job with the early Red Sox. But that year, I think he overextended himself. And kind of the signature line of my article.
Was that Offerman? Was that the no?
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Who was the big 2000? I remember this vaguely.
Yeah.
He took a couple of big swings.
He did. Well, and one of the ones that he did was, it's just going to seem like such a preposterous thing now, and it was a huge whiff on my part to chastise him for this, even though the moral hazard thing was true. I said, how could you trade Dennis Tankersley for Ed Sprague? That's crazy. Okay, first of all, Ed Sprague was not that good a player then, but Dennis Tankersley never became anything either. And
right.
There's a point to be made about the uncertainty of prospects, and yeah, it might be moral hazard, but maybe it'll work out anyway. But I think it goes back to this whole process of results thing that, maybe Will Myers doesn't work out and the Royals could be redeemed by this trade. But the fact of the matter is that you have to think about how am I trying to approach this and how am I trying to do this. The odds say that you should keep Myers and sign a pitcher, even if there is some chance that Myers becomes, I guess, the Dennis Tankersley of hitting.
Well, what you just described happens in every sport, I think. I mean, we certainly see it in basketball all the time. These GMs that if the team doesn't get better in that specific year, they're going to get fired. And those are always the best guys to trade for. The Celtics were in that position once upon a time with Chris Wallace in 2001 in a trade that I actually defended at the time because they had a chance to go to the finals. But the Celtics traded Joe Johnson and a number one pick for Tony Delk and Rodney Rogers.
Yep.
And those were two bench guys. It was a terrible trade, but at the time, the Celtics hadn't been good in about 10 years. And it was like, oh yeah, we're going to be better. And it was just such a short-term, stupid trade. That's when you really get in trouble. And I agree. I think that, first of all, look at the two sides here. You have Dayton Moore, who's under a ton of pressure, who basically needs to win now or he's probably going to lose his job. Then you have Tampa Bay, which is the best organization in the entire league. And as Buster wrote today, the only organization that probably has the owner, the GM, the scouting department, and the manager all completely aligned. That's not the team you want to trade with if your entire job is on the line. So I don't know. I just have a bad feeling about this one.
Well, and I agree with all that, and I think it goes to the point of, to me, I come back to one thing. When you say, what is the secret to a winning sports team, to a good sports team? My answer is a good owner. It all starts with the owner. I think you could tell general manager and the manager and Moneyball, and you want a clean-up hitter or a great quarterback or whatever, but the owner has to do right by you, and that could be just spending and getting the heck out of the way. That is one strategy. And another strategy is what happens with the Rays. And Stu Sternberg, I get very frustrated because I don't think he spends enough money because the Rays are profitable and he sort of plays it off and whatever. But it's definitely a line. He definitely has a relationship with Andrew Friedman and with Matt Silverman, the team president, with Joe Madden, and all the way down the line. And it absolutely works out that way. I mean, that stuff is all over the book that I wrote. I mean, it's talking about your goals being in alignment. I mean, the A's have this too, where Billy Beane has the complete trust of his owner. He could, stay there forever if you want. That's sort of a chicken and the egg thing. I mean, obviously you have to build credibility. Friedman and Beane are where they are because they've won on small budgets and they've proven themselves to be intelligent and so forth. But if you can somehow come into the relationship with some trust, where either the owner trusts the general manager, or if the owner is kind of absentee, then let's say the team president trusts the general manager as the owner's proxy, that's a great way to do it. It just allows you more freedom. You don't have to become desperate. You could just do things. It's easier said than done. I grant that, but it just becomes such a huge factor in avoiding the Tony Delk, Rodney Rogers trade, because that can blow up your team for years to come. Losing Joe Johnson in the number one, that hurts the Celtics. Maybe it still hurts the Celtics now in some ways. That's 10 years, really, of an impact for one trade.
Oklahoma City in the NBA, I think, is the closest version to Tampa Bay in baseball, where I think that whole organization is aligned. And even like what you saw with the James Harden trade, the owners didn't want to pay the luxury tax. That was clear. But I don't know if Sam Presti wanted to tie up his team with 4 guys for $60 million a year or whatever it was going to end up costing. And I think everyone there is on the same page with just having that flexibility. Now you look at that trade, and they took a huge gamble, hoping that Russell Westbrook and Durant were going to be able to take some of the creative burden that Harden had for that team, because he was just so crucial with the playmaking that he did. And, if it didn't work out, it would have been a disaster, because this was a team that had a top 4 chance of winning the title. And now Durant and Westbrook, I think, have really stepped up their games. They've vindicated, that the belief that they could possibly take over the team. And on top of that, Kevin Martin has fulfilled the Harden scoring, just the pure points that he gave them. And they have this lottery pick that they got that's basically Toronto's lottery pick. Sorry, Canada reference. Toronto's terrible. And this is a pick that if it's the 4th pick in the draft, Oklahoma City gets it. It's protected like top 3 and whatever, and it basically has, if it's anywhere between 4 and 14, they get the pick. So they might have the 4th pick in the draft next year. But that's a trade. Wouldn't you agree that's a trade that Tampa Bay definitely probably would have done?
Yeah, well, certainly. And one thing that the teams have in common also, I mean, we talk about smart. It's very rare that we talk about teams that are smart and have giant payrolls. I think that there's just sort of a natural tendency to say, oh, they do more with less, so they're awesome. I mean, look, there have been a lot of high payroll teams over the last 15-odd years, and I'm sure JackO will appreciate this comment, but you won't. But the Yankees make the playoffs every single year, and the Orioles, when they spent a lot of money, didn't, and the Mets, when they spent a lot of money, didn't. And I got to say, the Red Sox, when they spent a lot of money, sometimes they didn't too. The Yankees spend a little bit more than those teams, sometimes a fair bit more than those teams, but they get it done. I think Brian Cashman deserves some amount of credit. But sure, it's the case that there is some similarities, both in holding the line on salaries and it being consistent with your approach. And I'll tell you something, I find basketball much more interesting in some ways to break down than baseball in that respect, because baseball's not a team sport. It's a bunch of guys with a bat and one guy with a ball. That's it. And if you subtract whatever, Will Myers, James Shields, or anybody from a team, it's not like the team is going to be a house of cards and everything is going to be changed. Whereas in basketball, Harden affects your second unit. Harden affects, are you going to be able to have transition points in your second unit? Harden affects having a second ball handler, how these guys play off each other's interplay. Everything could change. It was possible that losing Harden could have destroyed the Thunder. It was possible that Westbrook just became petulant and started shooting more because he felt he had to do more, and whatever. Durant started arguing with him, and Ibaka never developed an offensive game, and it all fell apart based on one guy. That's never going to happen in baseball. And so when you trade whatever, a Shield, because you don't want to keep a bunch of these guys, it's actually a safer move than what the Thunder did. The Thunder took a big damn risk by trading Harden because of all that interplay between players. It's fortunate and for them, and I guess to their credit, that it's worked out so well and they've read the system. But I think Sam Presti in some ways has a much harder job than Andrew Friedman.
And the cap, which is always dicey, and expiring contracts, all that stuff. At the NBA, it has become a lot more interesting in that respect. And I really think, as a baseball fan, I don't care about baseball as much as I did. I still do, but I mean, in my heyday, I would have been much more upset about this. Just like what the Dodgers are doing. Like, at some point, is this even fun? Like, you're just, all right, you're going to spend $240 million on salaries, and there's just no rhyme or reason to what you're doing. The answer is always just to outspend everybody else. Everybody else is letting them do this. And I was talking to a buddy of mine who's a Dodger fan, and he was kind of bummed out. He's like, I never wanted to be the Yankees. And I totally identified with this because this is what happened to the Red Sox in the 2000s, where it's like, yeah, we all hated the Yankees because they did this, and now my team is doing this. It's depressing because you want to at least have a little bit of creativity and ingenuity with how your team puts it. You don't want to just be like, hey, here's our check, And I mean, do you agree with what the Dodgers did here? I know they have the money, but do you agree with it?
Well, and this is a little bit of my econ background speaking and having been a financial writer before that and all that. To some extent I do, just because the money's there. I mean, you could talk about overspending and you could say, well, okay, now they have to cut back because they overextended themselves. There is no limit to how much money the Dodgers can spend and still turn a profit. The TV deal that they're about to get is worth $647 billion.
Right.
They could go nuts. The only way I could see the Dodgers really reining in salaries is if Bud Felix knocks them upside the head. I just don't see any other way. Now, maybe it becomes where, someone like you who's liked baseball for a long time and has become turned off to it to some extent, maybe Felix sees writing on the wall or the commissioner's office sees writing on the wall and says, well, gee, this is too much. This kind of blows our make-believe fairy tale that baseball's a balanced sport, which it is not, by the way. Obviously, the caps are huge, but it's more huge in the case of the Dodgers, and we can't abide by this, and so we're going to really come after you, and we're going to try to, jerry-rig the luxury tax to make it more punitive or whatever. But until that happens, I guess from a fan standpoint, it can be a little bit frustrating. But on the other hand, if I was a Dodgers fan and, we hadn't won a World Series since 1988, I'd be like, hell yeah, let's go. Why aren't we doing this? I want to have a parade. I want to see Clayton Kershaw throw, game one of the World Series, and I want to see, this guy hit home runs. I want to see this happen. Let's go for it. So I'm sensitive to it a little bit. I understand you don't necessarily want to be the evil empire here, but the Dodgers have been mediocre to bad for quite a long time now, actually. And if they want to turn it around that way, then I guess more power to them.
Can we at least agree that if they could press the reset button on that Adrian Gonzalez trade, they probably would?
Yeah, and it's so funny to me because there are all kinds of problems with that trade, starting with the fact that Beckett and Crawford obviously are huge question marks. But is Adrian Gonzalez a superstar? I kind of think not. And maybe we kind of already saw that coming down the pike that year where they were buying low on Gonzalez, and usually we give teams credit for buying low on somebody. But in this case, it wasn't a buy low situation. It was just buying everybody, period. And yep. I was okay with the structure of the deal. I was okay with just let's absorb a lot of money because we can, because we know we're going to get this guy who's amazing. But that kind of trade would have been for Ryan Braun. In that case, I would say, well, it's Ryan Braun, of course. Adrian Gonzalez is not Ryan Braun anymore. And that's one of the biggest reasons why it's not such a good trade, aside from Crawford and Beckett and everything else.
Yeah, the fact that none of the Red Sox fans were even like 1% upset he was leaving probably should have been a red flag. I just get nervous with first basemen and corner outfielders past 30 who are like 2 years removed from their best year, 3 years removed. Like at some point, it's more than a red flag. You are what you are. And especially now that nobody's allowed to take PEDs anymore unless you're a boxer. I think they partially made that trade to make a splash, to make it clear to everybody there was a new sheriff in town and that whole thing. And look at this, we got a great Mexican-American player we can sell to our fans. But I also think they made that trade because they thought it would help them make the playoffs, which it didn't. And I also think they made that trade because they thought Gonzalez was going to hit down the stretch, which he didn't. And now you're paying a ton of money for a first baseman who's really not hitting for power anymore. And then if he's going to have a 390 on base and hit 20 homers for $25 billion a year, that's terrible.
And there are a couple of things that come up to me with that trade. One is they were trailing in the standings. They were trying to make the playoffs, and I get that. But, when you get down to a small sample size of anything, I think the trade was made like August 9th, and there were 3 games out. I'm in the right ballpark there. The odds are against you. It doesn't matter if you have the 27 Yankees. Things have to really go right. For 3 games is not nothing. You have to make that up. You have to hope that the Giants choke, and that didn't happen. And I thought all that was kind of it was very much a reach. And had they waited until the offseason, not only was that the Gonzalez reach not been in play or whatever, but Carl Crawford is eating up $100 million. You're damn right the Dodgers would have Josh Hamilton by now. But now because they have Crawford and ATA and Kemp in the outfield, they're saying to themselves, maybe we shouldn't do this, which is crazy. This is like the only way the Dodgers are ever going to say we shouldn't do this. Maybe Crawford becomes their 4th outfielder and I'm wrong. But it blocks them. That's the only way if you're a team that can spend unlimited money that you can hurt yourself is if you say, well, we've got this, so we don't need that, and therefore you block yourself out of a better player, and they did that. And I think to the point about Gonzalez and first baseman, this is one of the fascinating things to me about baseball. I think, basketball's kind of figured out, okay, LeBron's the best player, we're going to pay him the max, and it's fine. Obviously, there's different salary rules in basketball, but it's pretty easy to do that. In baseball, the guys who get paid the most money are still the first baseman that you're signing until they're 38 years old. Albert Pujols, Adrian Gonzalez, Mark Teixeira, Joey Votto, who I think maybe could be better than these guys, but that's not a sure thing. And he's got a knee injury, and he's making 20 plus. It's always those sluggers. Prince Fielder's another guy. Those are the guys that make the most money. And what we found in baseball is that whether it's by wins above replacement or just looking at with your damn eyes, the players that tend to contribute the most are all-around players. They play up the middle positions. They can play defense, and they hit 30 home runs, whatever. Mike Trout is the most valuable commodity in baseball. I mean, I wrote out, 10,000 words about it. And I'll be interested to see what happens when Mike Trout becomes a free agent in a few years. Will he get, $290 million or whatever, or will it be the kind of thing, let's say his power fades and he's a 20 home run guy, he still steals bases and gets on base or whatever. Will he get the mega bucks if on paper he's the most valuable player, or will it be still the old kind of fattening first baseman who gets it? I think it's so interesting that despite all the talk and all the money ball and everything about market inefficiencies, this is a glaring market inefficiency. These shortstops and center fielders who should be making more money are not making more money. It's the first baseman that you're signing until they're almost 40 years old.
We should mention, I've been doing that NBA trade value column for 12 years, and this year we did an NFL one with Barnwell, and then you wrote the baseball one last month, if any listeners missed that. Do you think, it seems like the Giants kind of inadvertently stumbled onto that blueprint that you're talking about, is the most important positions on the field are catcher, middle infield, and center field. And what I don't get, look at the Dodgers. You could have probably had Joe Mauer, right? If you're talking about adding a big salary guy who's kind of a name, making a little bit of a splash, I'm pretty sure the Twins would have been delighted to give them Joe Mauer. Would that have been a better route than going Gonzalez, Crawford, Beckett?
Well, certainly than acquiring all three. I mean, if we're comparing Gonzalez to Mauer, okay, there's a discussion to be had. Does Mauer have power? He's only got 1 year where he's got a lot of home runs, and maybe his knees are going to be wrecked or whatever. But sure, to absorb Crawford and Beckett and Gonzalez, no question, Mauer would have been a better move. And, it puts them in a funny position. At least they're identifying some things that they're trying to do. I mean, they thought that Hanley Ramirez could be that guy up the middle. I mean, it seems like they're trying up the middle a little bit.
Yeah, I didn't mind the
Hanley. He's not that guy anymore. So it's tough for them. Kemp is signed to a long-term deal. Kemp's great. He's a center fielder. He deserves all that money. A.J. Ellis, I mean, I have a soft spot for A.J. Ellis. He's been in Grantland Studios, by the way, which is one of the few baseball players to say that. He's a good catcher, certainly, but he's not necessarily Mauer, so they don't have that superstar there. So there is room to upgrade up the middle potentially there, or third base or second base or some other places. And I imagine that they're thinking about it, and part of the problem with having unlimited money, too, is you can't always just buy everybody. This wasn't the best free agent class because teams are getting smart. Kane got locked up, Votto got locked up, Hamels got locked up. So you're kind of left with whatever's there. Greinke was the best guy, so they signed him. That's fine. But it's not like there was $100 million second baseman on the market, at least on the free agent market, or a catcher who was that good. You would literally have to make a trade for somebody like that. But when you make a trade, you introduce variables. Probably the Twins would have said, okay, if you give us enough, we'll give you Mauer. But on the other hand, the Dodgers burned through most of their prospects in the Gonzalez trade and in other ways. And maybe the Twins are thinking, okay, we're not going to overspend on most of our roster, but Mauer was the number one pick, and he's from Minnesota, and we love him, and he's very handsome, and he's a good baseball player, so we're going to keep him. So this becomes the problem where you can take a write blank checks no matter what, but it's not like you've got all-star after all-star coming on the market every year. Usually there's only 2 or 3 guys who really want to break the bank for at this point in the age.
The one thing we learned from the last 5 months is that the Dodgers did not, or that Magic's group did not overpay for the Dodgers. Everybody was like, "Oh my God, that price is so high." I was in the minority on that. I actually thought it should have gone up to like $2.5 billion between the land you were getting with that stadium, which you can basically do anything with. You could turn that into something really awesome. And then on top of that, you knew you had the TV deal. So when you know you have $6 billion of TV money coming over the next 25 years, I don't understand how you overpay. I thought it was crazy that people thought they overpaid. I didn't get it.
I think people just have a problem with unprecedented numbers. If Greinke just got the highest average salary for any pitcher, okay, but that ignores that there's inflation, and then ignores that the industry's changing. We're going to have $9 billion in revenue by 2014. I mean, baseball is a wildly healthy sport. I know in some cases, maybe you're not keen on the whole Dodgers angle and that's turning you off a little bit, or you find basketball to be more exciting, or young people don't like baseball, whatever argument you want to use. But the numbers say that's not true. Or if it is true, then it's not all that relevant. Baseball's growing immensely, and it's the TV money that's really driving it. It's just huge what's going on. The first story that I wrote for Granlund about this trend was on the Rangers, and that was a while ago I wrote that piece. It was almost one of the first things I wrote for Granlund, as far as I remember. And that wasn't even that early in the game to be talking about this thing. This TV stuff has been coming down the pike for a while now, and it just made sense that the Dodgers were going to be in position to do this, because it turns out that Los Angeles is a very big place with a lot of people who would like to watch television, and it wasn't really that difficult to imagine it. But imagination is not necessarily the strength of sports executives, and maybe it's not the strength of you and I, of the general public. Maybe we just have a hard time embracing new numbers, whatever it is, whether it's the biggest salary for a team or a player. When it happens, there's always a lot of headlines. First $200 million guy, first team to be sold for $500 million or $1 billion, and this was so far and above everything that had ever happened. It's just a shock to the system. I think that people, numbers scare us a little bit, and we don't know what to do with that many zeros and whatever, even if the circumstances say that clearly it did turn out to be a good deal. It is a good deal.
Yeah, and here's the thing. You can never go wrong with paying a lot of money for a brand sports franchise. It's that nobody has ever regretted it. If you're buying the Steelers, the Eagles, the Cowboys, the Red Sox, the Dodgers, whoever, it doesn't matter what the price is, because you're going to be able to sell it for more than you paid for. It's just, I can't remember one of those signature franchises going for less than what somebody paid for. It's just never happened. I mean, even the Redskins.
I think that's the nicest thing anybody said about the Eagles since 2009, by the way. Go ahead.
Just very quickly, the Red Sox, who have a ton of money, they make a ton of money. They should be one of the top 5 or 6 spending teams. Do you feel like they are not totally being honest about the revenue situation with the ownership, and just, I feel like they've cut costs and they're claiming they're being more fiscally responsible. They claim that they're trying to bring more character guys into the clubhouse and all that. I'm not sure I'm buying it. Where do you stand on it?
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you in the sense that obviously they're making a huge profit. NESN is wildly profitable. Those regional sports networks, especially the Yankees and the Red Sox, are huge. And what I always say about the Yankees, my kind of buzz phrase when I talk about them, is if the Yankees had a $300 million payroll, they'd still be swimming in money. They'd still be making huge profits. So it's not a problem for the Red Sox. It's not quite as profitable as the YES Network, but they're doing great. But it comes back to this whole idea of you only have a certain amount of players, a certain number of players that you wouldn't want to pay $1 zillion to. And you talk about this in the NBA a lot. You always say there's only so many guys who deserve a max contract in basketball. But there are teams that have money, so more guys are going to get max contracts. So Roy Hibbert is going to be overpaid because he's there and you can have him and whatever, so you're going to overpay him. And the Red Sox might be looking at it and saying, yeah, we've got the money, but I don't know if we want a team full of Roy Hibbert. I don't know how much that's going to get us. Will it make the fans that happy to see that we're spending money if we win 86 games and the Blue Jays pass us? Yeah, probably not. They're going to say, oh, I like all these Hibberts. It doesn't really do anything. And so I think from that standpoint, it makes sense. You just have to, sometimes you have to bide your time and wait for the truly elite talent to come out. I think that's why the Dodgers went bonkers for Adrian Gonzalez, aside from the fact that they were trying to make the playoffs and the Dodgers and so forth, is that they said, maybe this guy could be better than a Roy Hibbert. Maybe he could be a superstar, so we're going to try it. But, the bottom line is you just don't have that many of these guys. And what's funny is a lot of these guys who are going to be the max contract players, the equivalent of the max contract players in baseball, we don't know that they are yet. Now, I don't think it's going to be Will Myers. He's not quite that complete a player. But it's going to be a prospect that we don't really know that well. Maybe it's Oscar Taveras from the Cardinals, who's a terrific outfield prospect. Maybe he's the guy that you're going to break the bank for. But Oscar Taveras won't be a fully formed player for 5 years or something. You just don't have the many guys that are out there right now that are not too old, meaning they're still in their 20s, who are available and who could potentially be worth that big money. They're just not out there. You can't get Ron from our team. You can't get Longoria. They're not available to you. And so, if the alternative spend on guys who are pretty good but not great, maybe you kind of keep your powder dry. So I'm sensitive to that from the Red Sox. I get why they're doing it.
I believe that, but then that doesn't explain why they spent all that money on Shea Victorino. Now you're straddling.
Shane Victorino's a great clubhouse guy, though. I mean, fantastic, off the charts. Maybe Michael Young level.
I think I would be a good clubhouse guy. I don't think they'd have to pay me $39 million. I'm torn on it because I actually wish they would go in that direction of being super smart and fiscally responsible and kind of biding their time until some big star becomes available or whatever, start stockpiling prospects. A little bit how the team was headed toward in the late 90s. I don't know if that's the reason they're doing what they're doing. I actually don't feel like they totally have a plan. And they're kind of going it by the seat of their pants. And it seems to me like a big part of what they've done this winter is they're talking about like improving the clubhouse. To me, it's more about like having a more likable team and how that team is perceived by the media, which is probably the harshest local media that any city has. And almost like they're like, oh, people will like Shane Victorino. He'll be great with the reporters. Like, I really wonder if that's like part of their thinking behind that. And if that's the case, I'm not happy with it. I think the most compelling thing that's probably happened, other than the stuff we talked about, though, is just that the Yankees. Did you ever think you'd use the word fiscally responsible with the Yankees?
Well, and Jason Stark wrote the quintessential article on this, and I refer people to that. It's on ESPN.com. It was written January of this year. I might even have the date. It might even be January 13th. That's how many times I've referenced this article. And it talks about exactly what the Yankees are going to get for being fiscally responsible, and it's something to the tune of about $40 million a year. Now, that doesn't mean that the Yankees are poor and they can't live without the $40 million. It means that the Steinbrenner family is going to take the $40 million and put it in their pockets, and that'll be that, which is fine. That's your right as an owner. You could totally do that. But they're just looking at it and saying, if for 1 year, if for 2014 we can get under this luxury cap, then we're just in a great position to bank all this money. So we're going to do that. Afterwards, they're not going to be fiscally responsible. When you get to 2015 and whoever is a free agent or David Price becomes available or whatever, Felix Hernandez, Justin Verlander, all these guys could be either a free agent or available by a trade. They're going to go bonkers. They're going to spend whatever it takes, and they're going to do it. It's just this 1 year. And it happens that it's at a time when the AL East is in flux, when Boston is down, Tampa Bay, they could be good again. We're still waiting to see. But now all of a sudden, Baltimore and Toronto have hope because there's weird things happening where they've made big moves and the Yankees are being, quote-unquote, fiscally responsible. It's a really funny dynamic in this division, what's going on now. So, I mean, I get it. They're just trying to put more money in their pockets, and that's all fine. But it prices them out of the market for a lot of guys. They're signing one-year contracts, which I know you've talked about. I think you talked about it with Nate. You said how much you liked, Kuroda for 1 year and Rivera and all these guys.
Yeah.
That's fine. But Zach Greinke would help the Yankees. Josh Hamilton would help the Yankees, and they're not getting these guys. I find that fascinating. They're really
but you know why,
for better or for worse, with their goal of making more money by avoiding the luxury tax. I mean, good for them. At least it's a goal. At least they're trying to honor what they're trying to do.
At least they were smart enough to know that those two guys might not have played too well in New York. I think the Yankees have become a lot more sensitive.
I'm not going to touch the Greinke thing because that's been beaten to death, but the Hamilton thing, there is some.
Well, it's just, I think they've learned from experience that part of the art of being the Yankees is finding the type of guys who can handle that kind of spotlight and pressure, just what it means to play for that team. And I think, they were so smart with CC Sabathia. He's the perfect kind of guy for that team. And it seems like they're moving more in that direction than some of the other directions. Speaking of the Yankees, we're going to go because we're going to bring in JackO. Jonah Keri, we will keep reading you on Greatland.com. Thanks for all the great work you've been doing.
Thanks, Bill.
All right, we're going to call my buddy JackO, diehard Yankee fan, right after this message.
You have to get your hands on some Subway steak melts, like the tender, juicy steak and bacon melt, the protein-packed Big Philly cheesesteak, and even the smoky Chipotle steak and cheese, all freshly toasted for mouth-watering, melty goodness. Get your own today. Subway. Eat fresh.
Complex Litigation, this is John.
Johnny!
What's up, buddy?
How are you?
Good, thanks. How are you?
Having some technical difficulties here.
Yes, indeed.
It wasn't as bad as the Ted Blu-ray repeating on Greatland for the entire night last night.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was a new kind of promotion. We just turned the entire site over to an interstitial ad over and over again. We couldn't stop it. Hey, Johnny.
Yeah.
It's a fiscally responsible Yankees team.
Yes, it is. It's
How is that for you? You enjoying that?
It's not your father's Yankees, that's for sure, as they would say in the car ads. No, it's a little troubling. It's a little weird. I mean, part of me is glad about it because after 42 years of my life, I'm tired of you just buy the World Series arguments and debates and going back and forth with that. So it's nice to see them be a little bit fiscally responsible. But the other part of me would like them just to go buy a catcher and a right fielder and be done with it like they did in the old days.
What catcher are you thinking?
I don't know. That's the problem. I mean, that's really the problem. That's why I'm not really all that bummed out in actuality, because the free agent market's a little sparse in terms of their needs. I mean, there's not. I don't really want to come within 100 feet of Josh Hamilton. He scares me for a variety of reasons, so I wouldn't want to give him a big time contract. And Yankees fans have been scared straight, I think, because of A-Rod's disaster of an anchor of a horror show of a contract.
Yeah.
So I don't want them to get into any long-term, high-money contract. So I can understand why they're not out doing it. But on the other hand, it is weird when they lose, like, Russell Martin, who was a capable catcher for them, over, basically a couple $1 million, or because they don't want to go to a third year with anybody. So it is weird to see that. Somewhere Big George is rolling in his grave.
I think Joe Mauer is looming.
Yeah. There's a lot of money, though, and the Yankees, they really are petrified about this luxury tax thing, where if you're over the luxury tax, over the number in 2013, and then you're over it in 2014, you pay like a 50% luxury tax or something.
Yeah.
Which, how did the union ever agree to that? I mean, wasn't that what the whole strike was about? I mean, it's basically a salary cap, essentially.
Yeah, but it's a salary cap for like the high-end teams.
Right. But I mean, basically that means you're not going to see any really huge big money contracts like you used to before. So I would think.
Oh no, we still have the Dodgers.
Well, that's true. They're still throwing money.
They're making it rain, Johnny.
That's true. They are making it rain. I take that back. Yeah.
I want to know who the second team was that was bidding in the 140s for Zach Greinke.
Yeah, really. I don't get that contract at all.
Me neither.
Terrible for the Angels last year, wasn't he?
Wasn't good. I will say that it's a nice team and a nice market for him. Good stadium, National League.
Yeah.
Probably the right fit for him. A-Rod.
Yeah.
Having surgery.
Yes. And
now,
waiting until mid-January for some reason, which people have rightly asked me about on Twitter. I don't quite get that. I mean, I think you'd want to get it over with so you could come back quicker and not just like, well, let's just saunter around and wait until January when, take my time with it. Doctors are available in December, no?
I think there's a little bitterness, Johnny, from what I'm hearing.
Well, I mean, and apparently now they're saying, well, there was some problem that went back to the postseason, which, part of me is, not that I'm happy that he's injured, obviously, but at least there's some answer, and it's not just declining skills, that maybe he was really playing hurt, and that's the reason he couldn't make contact with the ball. And I don't understand how, when you have $300 million invested in a guy, I'm sure they have trained medical professionals. I think they hired like the Red Sox medical staff that was always screwing up everybody's injuries. But
right.
How they didn't determine this back in October if it was a problem, and why he didn't have surgery right away so he could potentially be ready for spring training is beyond me. I just don't get it. I don't get waiting until January.
This is what I was told like a week before it was announced that he was out for the first 3 months. I was told that he was going to have surgery, that he needed surgery last year and played through it, that the team knew he was hurt, and I don't know whether they covered it up or what the deal was, but I was also told he's out for the year, not for 3 months.
Oh, really?
This is before any of this stuff came out.
So it doesn't matter if they do it in January or they do it now because he's not going to be able to come back anyway?
Yes. I have heard that he is out for the year. I'm not reporting that, though. I'm just telling you what I heard. I like to pass along things I've heard here on the BS Report.
Wow.
But yeah, I heard that like a week before, and I went home and I Googled it and didn't find any information about it. I was like, And then a couple of days later, that story happened.
I was hoping that they were waiting until January because they were assembling his crack medical team in Berlin, Germany.
Right.
Maybe they were off skiing in the Alps or something, and they had a holiday, and then they will start fresh in January, and he'll be ready to go in March.
Here's the thing.
Strange German technology that somehow brought him back before. So.
Well, do you get paid if you get suspended for PEDs? You don't, right?
I do not believe you do, no.
Yeah, see, PEDs are a big risk for him now. Like, if you're Melky Cabrera, not as big of a risk.
Right.
If you're A-Rod, you're making $30 million and you get suspended for 50 games, that's $10 million.
Yeah, it's real money.
So, on the other hand, he's kind of closing in on some pretty big benchmarks.
Yes.
And remember when it seemed like just a lock he was going to hit 800 homers?
Yeah. It's not so much of a lock anymore.
Not feeling like a lock now, Johnny.
It's not so much of a lock that he can even make contact anymore based on the postseason.
Where does he rank among your least favorite Yankees of all time?
Well, I don't know. That's a good question. I mean, I think he takes too much grief, and there's always too much drama around him. But I'm not a reflexive A-Rod basher like a lot of people are. I mean, I can't support everything he does, obviously, but I've had many Yankees that I liked a lot less than him.
600 and I just had it.
What? How many home runs he has?
Yeah.
I think he's got around
there it is.
40, 650.
647 homers.
Nice.
2,901 hits.
Yeah.
There you go.
What's
closing
Bond's
in on some
record?
numbers.
762.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's.
God, I don't feel good about that 762 at all.
No, nobody does.
It's
so he's got 115 more home runs to hit.
Remember poor Roger Maris had to carry around that asterisk?
Yeah, because they played 162 instead of 154.
Yeah, it feels like there should be a much giant asterisk for Bonds and Sosa and some of these guys that are in that thing. Have you do you care about the Hall of Fame, all these guys becoming eligible?
No, I'm so tired of the argument and the, standing on my soapbox to talk about steroids as sports writers like to do, pontificating. And I mean, the thing is, as we've discussed ad infinitum before, like guys like Bonds was a phenomenal player, even when he was skinny and obviously not using any performance enhancing drugs. Same thing with Clemens. The issue with steroids is guys that were marginal players that then became really good players or even superstars, and it's like their career takes a weird hockey stick shaped turn on a graph.
Yeah.
Those are the ones that there's huge question marks. But guys like Bonds and A-Rod and Clemens were all Hall of Famers, and you can't pinpoint when did they start using. You can't pinpoint was Clemens on steroids pitching to guys that were on steroids, so maybe there was a competitive balance there. I mean, I understand it inflates the records, the numbers are inflated, but seeing as how you can't put a point on that aspect of their career as to where it started. I mean, I think it probably should be referenced in the era they played in and suspicions. I mean, you can put that on the plaque in some way, but
yeah, why can't it go on the plaque?
Huh?
I'm fine with it going on the plaque.
Yeah.
First of all, I'm glad I don't have a vote because I would vote for every PED guy just to piss off the other guys.
Right.
But I can't believe that Bonds isn't a Hall of Famer. Bonds was a Hall of Famer before he started taking PEDs.
Right.
And also PEDs weren't technically illegal.
Right.
For at least a few years.
Well, I think they were illegal criminally, but I mean they were they weren't explicitly banned by the game, but still, yes.
I mean, they weren't testing for him. It's just hard for me to. I don't understand the point of the Hall of Fame if Pete Rose isn't going to be in there and somebody's
right.
Can't they have like a disgraced wing?
Right. I mean, or just reference it, put it on there. I mean, the Hall of Fame it's a museum. It's not like this, sanctified place. It's not a church or a temple. It's not the Vatican where only the precious few can get in. And it's based on your numbers in a baseball game. And there's guys in there that played before African Americans were allowed to play. There's guys that never had to travel farther west than St. Louis. They didn't have extensive road trips. They had to travel by train instead of plane. I mean, you can't compare eras and do all these different things. The game is what it is, and it goes through different periods. It's a historical museum of baseball history. It's a historical museum of history. It's pretty good circular logic there. But, it drives me crazy when sports writers pontificate about, the sanctity and the stupid thing because, Babe Ruth didn't get in on, with 100%, that none of these guys can get in at 100%. So somebody like Ricky Henderson, who's a rock-solid Hall of Famer, doesn't get in with 100% of the vote. I mean, it's asinine.
Yeah.
Guys get together. I'm not going to vote for Ricky Henderson because Babe Ruth didn't get 100%. I mean, come on.
I don't even care who's in the Hall of Fame. I more care about how pious everybody gets about it.
Right.
And I just don't understand how Barry Bonds isn't going to be voted into the Hall of Fame.
Right. And the Pete Rose thing is even more ridiculous. I mean, if there was ever proof that he bet against the Reds and threw games and had told guys to dog it because he had heavy action on the Dodgers or something, that'd be one thing. But every evidence points to the fact that he bet on the Reds. Now, maybe that changed some of his managerial moves or whatever, but yeah, he tried to win more, presumably if you had action on the game. But
I like it. I think it makes him smart. He had a lot of inside info.
Right. He only bet him on days he felt good. but the guy with the most hits ever. I mean, that means something in the game, you know?
This will be good. I'm going to throw some names at you. You know, there's this whole sabermetric movement that started over the last 12 years.
Yeah.
People who look at baseball differently. I would say my buddy JackO is as old school as it gets.
Right.
There's no more old school than you.
No, that's me.
Is Craig Biggio a Hall of Famer?
Yeah, he is.
He is. Wow, I thought you were going anti-Biggio.
Well, I mean, I think he was like a classic compiler that he stuck around so long. But he has 3,000 hits, right?
Did you ever say the words "Craig Biggio's in town, honey"? Get your stuff. We're going to see Craig Biggio tonight.
No, of course not. I'm not going to be bouncing my grandkids on my knee about Craig Biggio, but he did go to Seton Hall, though, I think. And you know how much I like Seton Hall, so that's why he gets in.
I'm torn on it. I mean, he should definitely be in because of some of the other guys that are in.
Right.
But this goes to a larger philosophical debate of what constitutes a baseball Hall of Famer. I think the most interesting thing with him, he reached base by hit or walk like the 18th most times in the history of baseball. Which, when you think about it, like we always care about 3,000 hits. Joan and I were talking about this we were emailing a bunch about this like a week ago. You know, we care about hits and 3,000 hits, but we've learned over the last 12 years that really getting on base matters more than anything.
Right.
And, you know, the list of, if you're in the top 20 guys who have ever gotten on base the most,
yeah,
you're probably a Hall of Famer. I'm okay with Craig Biggio. I don't even remember what color he is, but I'm okay with it. No, I know he's white. I'm just kidding. Mike Piazza.
Well, that's an interesting one because, see, now he's a guy who was like a, 800th round draft pick or whatever. It wasn't a highly regarded prospect, and then he turned into, the top hitting catcher of all time, arguably.
Late bloomer.
And I mean, that's a guy who there's an enormous amount of question marks about. So that's
never proven. No actual hardcore evidence.
No, but
just
there's been a lot of stories about the back knee and everything else.
Yeah, we had friends who had back knee in college.
What's that? Yes.
I remember seeing some back zits in college. I never wanted to not vote them into the Hall of Fame.
So, I mean, I guess on the numbers and because he was a catcher and the things that he did offensively, I mean, he probably is. I guess it's different for a catcher because they obviously that takes a toll on you, so you don't put up the same numbers as another player. But for a time, he was the best catcher in the game. I think he was a better player than Craig Biggio.
I vote yes for Piazza. Show me some hardcore evidence he cheated. Kurt Schilling, one of your favorites.
Yeah, as much as it pains me, a guy asked me this question on Twitter, so I actually went to baseballreference.com or something, and I looked up his numbers, and I have to admit that regretfully, I think he is a Hall of Famer. I mean, he was a huge difference maker on not one but two World Series teams.
Yeah.
The Diamondbacks and the Red Sox, and this is his number of strikeouts and wins. I know he doesn't have 300 wins or anywhere close, but especially in the era that he pitched in to put up those numbers, as much as it pains me to say and as much as I hate it, yeah, he probably is. Hey,
when he gets voted, when he gives his Hall of Fame speech, can we tape your face watching it for the Grantland channel or our YouTube channel? Just a camera on you for 25 minutes as you react to his speech.
I just hope he doesn't try to sell the plaque.
He doesn't try to sell what?
He doesn't try to sell his Hall of Fame plaque.
Oh, come on. Too soon. Too soon. Sammy Sosa, 609 homers.
See, now this is, I guess because if I have to be consistent and I say, well, the guy, you put up the numbers, but his home run numbers are just so questionable, and he was such a marginal player when he played and was kind of a joke, and then his career just completely took off, and he became,
you think that was suspicious?
Baseball and all that. What's that?
You thought that was suspicious?
Just a hair, yeah. So he's another guy like a Piazza where I think, that's the one where I understand he never failed a test and there's no hard and fast evidence. So I guess based on the numbers, you have to put him in. But that one ought to have a big asterisk on it, I think.
Sammy had 66 in 98.
Yeah.
63 in 99, 50 in 2000, 64 in 2001, and 49 in 2002.
That's the thing where it's really like, because, for so long, those numbers of 755 and Willie Mays having 660 and, were just like sacred numbers, and guys hitting, Maris's record stood for, 37 years, and Ruth's had stood for, 30 years before Maris broke it, and then to see guys just like shatter it repeatedly in repeated years. I mean, that really is super shaky. At the time, we should have been like, boy, that's weird,
Yeah, I think we were.
Yeah, I think
it's funny because there's certain things are happening now in other sports when we should probably be having that same reaction, and we're not.
Yeah.
There's a certain level of diplomacy. You want to give people the benefit of the doubt, but you could go to any sport, and anything that looks a little off might be off for a reason.
Right.
Like, say, Manny Pacquiao getting knocked down twice in a fight, including knocked unconscious by a guy who didn't knock him down in 36 rounds previous to that fight.
Yeah, and the guy was how many pounds heavier of solid muscle or whatever.
Yeah. Kenny Lofton.
No, Kenny Lofton is not a Hall of Famer. He was a great leadoff guy, but for a period. But I just don't think that he was a Hall of Famer. I don't even think he has the numbers for it, does he?
Here's what Jonah wrote: 15th all time in steals, 80% steal success rate, 299, 372, 423 were his splits. Great defense, a couple monster seasons, good clubhouse guy.
Tim Raines is not in the Hall of Fame though. And if Tim Raines isn't in the Hall of Fame, then Kenny Lofton doesn't deserve to be in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, he has to wait for Tim Raines.
Because Tim Raines is a much better player than Kenny Lofton ever was.
When Tim Raines makes it, if Tim Raines makes it on the heels of what happened with Nate Silver with this last election, I think all the stat guys are just going to turn into a melting, crying puddle of happiness and joy.
Yeah, I mean, Tim Raines was the second best base stealer of his era behind Ricky Henderson, and how he's not in the Hall of Fame is an outrage.
Yeah, it's really too bad because
the cocaine thing, is that what everybody's mad about?
Yeah, the whole sliding head first. What was the thing with him? He slid head first because he had a coke vial in his back pocket or something. Yeah. I just don't think we knew how to appreciate him.
It was the 70s and the 80s. It was a different time.
I remember when we were playing that What If Sports all the time in the early 2000s, before people really understood the power of on base. Mm-hmm. And you just started grabbing the best Tim Raines seasons as your leadoff hitter because it was his on base when his slugging was such an advantage. That was the first time I'd ever realized that he had even had some of those seasons.
Yeah.
Because I guess he was buried in Montreal and, just never think about it. Hey, how about Larry Walker?
Well, he is my favorite Canadian baseball player, one of them.
Wow, Ryan Radmanovich just got really sad.
That's right. Ryan Radmanovich, my buddy, is my favorite Canadian baseball player. Larry Walker's number 2, I suppose. Does he have 3,000 hits?
Oh, no.
No.
He does not.
I mean, he was a great hitter for a period there, but I don't think...
He has the Colorado thing.
Yeah, Colorado, I think that jazzes up his numbers. I don't think he's a Hall of Famer now.
400 lifetime on base.
Good.
565 lifetime slugging, 383 homers.
Oh, no, 380. I thought he had higher homers than that. No, that's not enough.
He won an MVP in 97.
Yeah, no, not enough.
7 Gold Gloves, Johnny.
It's like Mattingly. I mean, my heart tells me that Mattingly should be in there, but it just doesn't have the numbers overall to get in.
I agree with you.
Great couple seasons, but not enough.
I don't think he is either. I agree with you. Last one, Dave Roberts.
No, because he was out at second base. Clearly, the umps blew the call.
Oh, stop it. Did you see your boy Mariano Rivera at a basketball game last week?
I did not. No. Oh my God, was he playing?
No. He was at an NBA game.
Oh, really?
Mariano Rivera. Yeah.
I thought it was like some pickup game. I'm like, I don't want him doing that on the knee. No, he was.
No. I forget what game it was. It might have been.
I remember a couple of years ago or last year, they all went to an Orlando Magic game. So I think a lot of guys in the Yankees like the NBA.
Maybe that's what the game was. Yeah, I saw him in the stands. I got excited.
He probably lives down to Tampa, so they would just jet over to, it's probably only like an hour to Orlando or whatever.
So quickly, the Yankees, they didn't really do anything.
No, well, they're going to bring back Ichiro, apparently.
Well, you like Ichiro.
Oh, yeah, no, I'm happy about that. I like their outfield. It's good defensively. Those guys will run down everything. They brought back Hiroki Kuroda. I'm happy about that. So I think they're going to have a good pitching staff, and they don't have a catcher, and they don't have a third baseman.
Well, those are only 2 of the 9 positions.
Exactly. They can cover some field out there. So yeah, I'm curious what they're going to do about a catcher. I would have liked to have them bring back Russell Martin for the money that was involved, because I think he was decent, decent defensively, and he'll get a big hit for you now and again.
Do you have any sarcastic comments about the Shane Victorino signing that I need to hear?
Well, I think it's good that they have a guy who's a good outfielder in right field, because all the balls that get by Napoli, he'll be able to chase them down.
Oh.
When they're rolling around in the corner, he can chase those out. So
come on.
Talk about bidding against yourself. I'd like to know who the other teams were that were going to go anywhere north of $30 million on Shane Victorino.
The Indians were allegedly in there for 4 for 44, and I feel like it was totally fake.
Yeah, I'd like to see that. I'd like to see that written offer before I'm going to believe that.
I think Francona got wind that they wanted him and just told his GM, just make believe you're about to bid 44. They'll go to 39. Watch.
Exactly.
And that was it.
The Indians were doing they were making a lot of, offers this year. They were supposedly in on Swisher, and they were in on Euclid, and I'm not even going to talk about the possibility of Euclid becoming a Yankee. I'm not sure that I can discuss that yet.
Yeah, has there ever been a signing that would just completely bum out the Yankees and Red Sox fan bases at the same time?
Well, I remember, in my formative high school years, the big debate was always Mattingly versus Wade Boggs on the Red Sox. And I hated Wade Boggs. I really despised him just because he was a Red Sox, and he was challenging the beloved Mattingly for batting crowns, and we always used to get in fights about that with Red Sox fans. He became a Yankee, and of course I rooted for him, because I think in Seinfeld you're just rooting for laundry, and same thing with Clemens. So, I don't pretend to be like that I'm going to stand on principle, but Euclid is really, really, really going to test that. That may be a bridge too far for me.
I got to say,
I don't care for him.
I think it would be a great signing by the Yankees. I still think he's got a little left in the tank. Worst case, he has 1 year left in him where he just gets a crazy amount of walks and doesn't hit for a lot of power, but has like a 420 on base.
I worry about him playing third base. I'd be much more comfortable. I'd be much more comfortable if he was playing first or DHing, because I just think that he's waiting to break down, and playing third every day, and the pounding he's going to take is not going to be fortuitous for the Yanks if it happens. And I don't like the fact that it's taken him the Indians signed Mark Reynolds the other day, so that was his only other option. I don't know what's taking him so long. If he's going to sign, then I don't know what he's waiting for.
That would be fun if Euclid was on the Yankees.
It would be so weird, his reaction when he got to Fenway, and even his reaction at Yankee Stadium. Fans, I guess, you root for the uniform, so it doesn't matter. But, that's really a tough one. Tough times for me, I'll tell you. Between Obama's reelection and Euclid on the Yankees, I don't know. I used to say in 2004 that if John Kerry won and the Red Sox won the World Series, I was going to go off, and I was going to get off the grid and just go live in the woods. Now I have a wife and kids, so I would miss them. I can't really go live off in the woods, but God, it looks tempting. But Euclid in that jersey, I don't know. I may be heading for the teepee in the woods.
You're very focused.
I'd survive for about 6 minutes, but
you're focused on 2016 when the Yankees start spending again, and you have 3 Republican candidates.
Marco Rubio, my boy Rubio, comes back. Yeah, I don't know.
Rubio.
I think I'm just gonna have to lay low for a while. Just keep my powder dry. Just I don't know.
Yeah, hang out with the kids. Watch some Good Luck Charlie with your oldest daughter.
That's right. Yeah, we are fans of Good Luck Charlie. Yeah,
it's a good one.
Yeah,
I'm trying to get my daughter into Boy Meets World.
Oh, really? Well, that's coming back now, right? Aren't they doing it?
It is, and they show it all the time on MTV too.
Yeah.
And she likes Good Luck Charlie, and I guess that's like the Boy Meets World for this generation.
Younger
I don't know,
kids, I guess. Yeah, a little bit.
My son is on a run right now with Super Mario Brothers 2. He goes on YouTube. He watches other people play Super Mario's 2. Then when he plays it, it's almost like he scouted the different levels.
Really? That's good.
He's kind of like the Bill Belichick of video games.
That's good. He's breaking down the tape. That's good.
Can he read yet? No. But listen, these video games, they're going fantastic.
The way computers are going, kids aren't going to have to read anymore. It's all read to them. So.
No, he can use the iPad better than I can.
Speaking of Good Luck Charlie, I swear that Disney, they put some sort of subliminal something in their shows because it's just like crack for kids.
Yeah.
I have a 16-month-old daughter, and my older daughter will watch the Disney Channel, and there's a show called Austin and Ally, where the kid is the singer, and he's kind of like a homeless man's Justin Bieber. And the kid is just like your normal like teeny bopper, and my 16-month-old goes crazy for the kid. Any song he sings, she jumps up and like runs to the TV and starts dancing.
Really?
We have to play it, like if she's having a fit, we start playing it on the iPad. We look for it on YouTube on the iPad, and it immediately calms her down and makes her happy. She's
Wow.
16 months old, and she's going crazy for this Bieber wannabe. It's crazy.
You think there's like some giant mind control thing going on?
I think I'm a little worried about it. I mean, she's 16 months old, and it's like, you know, she goes crazy for it. One of these days we're going to like videotape it, put it on YouTube, and maybe get a guest spot on the show or something. She really goes crazy for him.
Can we have that for the YouTube channel?
Sure.
Can you work at a cat? Can you work at a kitten?
We don't have any pets, but I'll see if I can borrow one.
Maybe Photoshop a kitten in there.
All right, perfect.
We'll just do JackO, daughter, kitten, Disney.
Her dancing to Austin, the kid from Austin and Ally, Ross Lynch. He's got a huge fan. He's big in the 16-month-old community.
How proud were you, as a lifetime friend of Joe House, to see his House Eats video get 70,000 YouTube views?
It's fantastic. He's knocking on the door of Gangnam Style there in terms of hits. Pretty good. It's pretty good.
The Chinese
about
food
time
is
he was
coming next week.
by America. What only a small select few knew. It's important that everybody knows now.
I had somebody, one of my friends who doesn't know House, watched it because I was telling him about it at dinner, and I sent him the link, and he emailed me a couple of days later. He just wrote, "He's an animal." That was his reaction. Like, yes, he is.
Indeed, yes, indeed.
We're thinking about sushi for the third one because it's the one thing I've never seen House stop eating. You know how dogs just eat and eat?
Yeah.
If you just left food there, they'd eat until they died?
Yeah.
I think House is like that with sushi.
Well, sushi's kind of light, you know. It would take a lot to fill you up, so he could really do some damage, I think.
Yeah. I'm excited for that. Yeah. And listen, we might get 100,000 page views of people watching Joe House eat. It's really a great achievement.
Looking forward to that.
Should all be proud. JackO, good luck with the rest of the Yankees shopping season.
Thank you, such as it is.
We'll talk to you before the holidays.
All right, sounds good.
All right, buddy. See you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
So I get to sign off. Whoa!
Thank you for downloading the BS Report with Bill Simmons.
Too much fun.
Check out more podcasts at the iTunes Music Store or at Pod Center at ESPNradio.com.
Peace out.